Welcome to the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast, a podcast where we teach speakers how to land paid speaking engagements and corporate contracts. Each week, we deliver high-quality content that teaches you how to level up your speaking business. Be sure to join the Speak Your Way to Cash Facebook group after having your mind blown by this information-filled episode. Now, here's your host, Ashley Kirkwood, lawyer and professional speaker. This is the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast.
Hey guys, it's Ashley Kirkwood with the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast, and I'm so excited because today we have with us J. Israel Greene, who is an accomplished speaker, and he's going to talk through how he built his platform, where he's at now, and where he'd like to go in the future. So welcome to the podcast, J. Israel.
Hey, Ashley. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and thank you for having me on. Huge fan of yours.
Thank you so much. So I'd love to start off by just you telling us what your business model consists of and how speaking plays a role in that business model.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I am a speaker, a leadership trainer, and an emerging leader coach. And the organization that I work for, which is Lead You Academy, I am the founder of that organization. We are essentially what I would call a full service employee engagement and culture transformation company. And I know it sounds a little bit nebulous, but what I mean by that is what we found is that a lot of business leaders, they struggle with, trying to create a productive and a thriving culture, and they don't know where the issues are. And it's vital to their success. So we come into those organizations and we help the business leaders identify where their weaknesses are. And we basically help strengthen those weaknesses and grow their organization. And at the end of the day, they feel more productive because they now have an engaged company. And we do this through an array of services and offerings, everything from assessments to leadership training and coaching, all the way through executive leadership roundtables. And we have probably about 20 to 30 assessments that we have and that we can roll through. And then we also have roughly about 150 courses. And more importantly, we are trained in systems and processes as well, such as Lean Six Sigma. So we're able to identify where the gaps in those companies are and help them achieve those gaps and leverage their leadership skills to further the company.
Awesome. That sounds like a very robust offering. When you first started the company, did you offer all of the things that you now offer?
We did not. What I found was it was just basically me coming in and doing leadership training. And I really focused on emerging leaders because I noticed that there was a gap between the potential of an emerging leader and them getting promoted and the tools that they're given once they're promoted. And they're looked at, as a great contributor, and then all of a sudden they get this promotion and then they start to fail. And the leaders are wondering, okay, what in the heck is going on? So now what I've done is be able to say, hey, these assessments help us be able to narrow down where the gaps are, which is extremely important. So no longer are we guessing where the issues are. We're able to, with precision accuracy, be able to pinpoint where that problem is and then put together a program that can address those problems.
Great. And for your business, speaking, it started off, it sounds like, as just a leadership training company. Is that right?
Correct. We were speaking, and it kind of goes back even before that, but I was speaking in front of audiences just on personal growth and development. And the leadership component of it really interested me. And that was the quickest way to be able to have leaders develop leaders. And the growth was exponential at that point. But it was really about personal growth development and helping organizations with the leadership speaking component of it.
Nice. Okay, great. So let's talk about that transition. How did you get into personal growth and development speaking? Or what did it look like on day one of your speaking journey when you decided, okay, I want to train or I want to speak and I'd like to get paid for that? What did you do first? How did you figure that out?
Good Lord, Ashley. Let's see. For me, it was really speaking at organizations that I had a passion for and going through, some things through my childhood, speaking at those organizations and finding that I actually had a voice and a story and being able to share that with other people. And when I started doing that, I would go into organizations, speak for free because no one knew who in the heck I was, what I was talking about, but I knew that I had something to offer. So it was essentially a mindset of, I want to be able to share my story and empower others. And it goes back to when I was acting, starting in 6th grade, I got bit by this bug. And then I became passionate about being the voice for those who don't have a voice, especially if you have a stage to share. So as I started going through that, I would then become certified in different things and borrow from other people's credibility, if that makes sense. So
Mm-hmm.
a good example is John Maxwell. I went through his program, got certified and all of that. So I would lead with, hey, you know what? I am a certified, leadership trainer and coach with the John Maxwell team. So I was able to borrow from his 50 plus years of experience and get in the door with organizations and then build on it from there.
Awesome. And that's a really good point. And I wanted to ask you more about that because I think for a lot of speakers, in any industry, so in the legal industry, I worked at a large law firm. That firm is very well known. So I leverage that when I'm pitching corporations. So you have some brand recognition that you can borrow. But in the speaking field, it seems like it can be difficult to build that brand yourself. So you went through John Maxwell's training. And were you then able, at the end of his training, were you then able to provide the same trainings that he provides as a certified presenter?
Absolutely. So there are probably about 15 courses that I teach and coach on through his program, as well as we are trained as coaches based on the John Maxwell philosophy. So it adds a whole level of credibility for you to be able to get in the door. Now, once you've got the credibility and once you've been in the door a few times, you have to start building your own brand. It becomes important to do so. And that was a big eye opener for me is whenever and I'll pick the phone up and call anyone and say, hey, you know what? I noticed that you're successful. Ashley, what did you do here? I did it, to you as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I picked the phone up, called someone, and they're like, hey, I just took a look at your website and everything screams John Maxwell. And he's like, you're no longer John Maxwell. You're Israel Greene. You have a story. You have a purpose. You have a passion. You've got credibility on your own now.
Right.
Now stop. It's no longer about John Maxwell. It's about the client, solving for their problem, and building your brand.
That's a really good point. So you were doing some speaking, it sounds like, before you received the John Maxwell certificate in training, and that speaking was predominantly for free. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And how did you select which organizations you would give free trainings to?
Even today, there are still about 2 or 3 organizations that I have a passion for, and it's those organizations that really help develop the youth. And I just have a big heart for young men and young women who are trying to make it and, trying to grow themselves and trying to grow their business. So to be able to give back to those organizations and if their mission aligned with mine was the main thing, and it was about giving back and it was a worthwhile cause, then organizations like Year Up is a good example.
Mm-hmm.
I will come in there and I will speak to them for free any given day of the week because I believe in what they're doing and the value that they're bringing to the community.
That's a really good point. So it sounds like there's a philanthropic alignment that needs to be there in order for you to donate a speech to an organization, but it does at least further your mission in that sense. So that's a great point. And then you get this John Maxwell training certificate. And do you start pitching his trainings to your own database of potential companies, or does he help you with that process as well?
No, you really start pitching into your own database. So and this is the grind of the job. This is the piece where most people, it separates the head of the pack from the rest of the herd, really.
Right.
Is if you aren't doing the work and diving in and pitching. And this is the piece that people hate. No one wants to get told.
Everyone wants to outsource this piece. That's the number one.
Exactly.
I'm trying to find someone who can pitch me to get paid engagements. That's my biggest concern right now. And I'm just like, yeah, you and everyone else.
Yeah. And the reality is no one can tell your story better than you.
Right.
So it behooves you to get on the phone, to send the email and follow the process to get, someone to pick up the phone and talk to you.
Yep. So how did you identify, because I think for a lot of folks, okay, they're like, all right, I'll bite. I have to start pitching, but it's hard for me if I want to be in the personal development space or the leadership space, both of which are crowded by phenomenal speakers. How do I determine what niche I will focus on? Because I do think when you're just starting out, it doesn't make sense for you to just say, I want to speak to companies and then just try to pitch companies generally, but really figuring out an area or a niche within the clients that you're going after that you can pitch consistently and find consistently. How did you determine which companies you'd go after and the job title of the individual that you would pitch specifically?
Ashley, that's a great question. The big thing that I did was I took another course, and I'm all about self-development. And it was Get Corporate Clients. And in this course, there's an exercise where you put yourself in the center, and on the outside, you put down all of the jobs that you've done over the entire career span of your life.
Yep.
You also put down what skill sets you have, and then you put down your passions all around that. From there, you take it and you try to align the three, and you figure, okay, based off of what I've done in my career, based off of my passion and my skill set, I know that I would be good at XYZ. And for me, when I did that exercise, I was able to identify that I had a passion for emerging leaders. I was good at developing people, and I had a passion for identifying gaps in the space and then putting systems and processes in place to bridge those gaps and help them become better leaders. So that's really where my niche is in terms of emerging leaders. I know what my leadership lid is for myself, and I know what value that I can bring to those individuals that are struggling with, how do I go from peer to boss, or how do I go from, telling my buddy over here that they're not doing the job, hey, we're gonna have to let you go at some point. So that's really the piece of it. And then in terms of whether it's large or medium or small, I took a look at what my finances needed at the time. So am I cash poor right now? If that's the case, then I know that I need to be targeting small local customers or clients that are basically in my own backyard. They're easy to get to. There may be the owner of the company. The decision-making process isn't as long.
Right.
And then if it's a little bit longer, I look at medium to enterprise-size clients.
Hey guys, it's Ashley Kirkwood here, and I know this is an amazing interview. And if you are someone who is interested in taking your speaking career to the next level, then do I have something for you? Okay, I need you to go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com/SYWTC live replay. That's ashleynicolekirkwood.com/SYWTC live replay. The link is also in the show notes that you can grab the Speak Your Way to Cash live replay, which has 7 modules, a ton of information about how you can start speaking your way to cash. Now, this training is absolutely action-packed, phenomenal. It has additional resources. It has templates. It has a podcast pitch template, a college pitch template, something you can send to media outlets to get on television. It has everything you need to develop a sales strategy, a press strategy, and a plan to skyrocket your speaking career. And it is crazy affordable, okay? So head on over there right now, ashleynicolekirkwood.com/SYWTC live replay, and grab your copy today. All right, let's get back to this interview. So when you're looking at companies, so according to like a Census Bureau, there are like 5.6 million employer firms in the U.S. And then firms with less than 500 workers account for 99.7% of those businesses. So when you're thinking of small companies in your backyard, were you just separating by number of employees, going after small companies, or did you just search like local businesses in insert town here and start cold calling or cold emailing those companies if they look like they could utilize your services? Because I imagine to develop leaders, they have to have a leadership structure.
Correct. I mean, and they can be relatively flat. So if it's tons of hierarchy, that poses a problem. But I took a look at small, medium, large, and nonprofit is kind of how I broke it down. And then whether the business was local or regional. If they're regional, they are more likely to have a leadership structure because they need someone to manage those remote offices.
Right.
So if they were regional and they're headquartered here, less than 50 to 100 employees or more than 50 to 100, then that's really kind of what I was focusing on initially, because it was much easier to get into those. They can't afford a high cost John Maxwell himself.
Right.
But they can't afford me at the time. And then from there, I get that experience, get some case studies under my belt, and then I branch out to the medium businesses and larger businesses from there, mostly national and international.
Perfect. And you mentioned case studies, and I'd love to dive into that because for those of us who do one-off training engagement. So I have like two types of clients that I work with. One would be I come in because it's, it's a month, it's a Black History Month, it's Women's History Month. You want me to do a motivational speech and encourage all of your employees to do X. But I work with you one time. And so I don't really have the same leverage as I'd have if we worked together over a quarter or over 6 months to figure out how I directly impacted the bottom line or the growth of the business. How did you get case studies in the very beginning when you were doing these one-off trainings, or were you always offering them longer-term solutions?
I wasn't. And that's really kind of, back to your initial question of, did I always offer my whole entire product set? Because I didn't. It was much more difficult to do that. So the case study at that level was simply a testimonial.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you know what? Israel came in. He spoke about the 5 levels of leadership. As a result, my team was able to quickly get up and running. So I use that as a case study. And then there's no numbers behind it, but people still want to see proof that you know what the heck you're talking about.
Right.
So to have that testimonial is great. As I went larger and I was able to now put in programs like our performance gap indicator assessment that basically measures the gaps in the beginning on 5 non-financial KPIs. And then as we put together a program, we then measure in another 90 days and another 6 months so that they can see those gaps close from 70% to 50 to 35 to whatever goal that we set at that point in time. From there, we're able to say, okay, hey, when you started, what was your retention rate? It was 14% for client retention. Okay, now what is it? It's now at 7%. Okay, would you say that this impacted that retention rate? The things that you learned from our trainings and our coaching. And at that point, if they say yes, okay, great. Now we've got some documented numbers that we can put down.
Yeah, and those numbers I think are the most powerful. And we don't always as speakers give ourselves enough credit for the impact that we make on companies. And I say we because I recently worked with a client. I went in and did a communications training about how to, communicate with empathy. And I gave them a methodology for changing the way they communicate internally and also externally. And I, did the training and left. And they called back to get additional support. And we're just like, yeah, we printed it out. It's all over the office. We totally changed the way we communicate with employees when they walk in the HR department. We now do X, Y, and Z as a result. But I didn't even ask them for that information. They kind of volunteered it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've changed the entire way that you communicate. All of your employees went from not having any comfort level with communicating about sexual harassment issues to being totally comfortable and having a formula to use and having these difficult conversations, which is a big deal. But I know that I have sometimes undervalued the greater impact even of an individual training. So that's great that you are tracking that. And you want to get reviews, but I think the way that you ask for reviews is really critical to how impactful that review is. Because what I heard you say is that, okay, Jay Israel came in, and then as a result is huge. If you can get someone to say, and as a result, X happened, or as a result, Y happened, like that's going to be what will attract your additional clients.
Absolutely spot on. And it's
that's
so funny, data is where everything is at. So if you've got details breed credibility. So the more details that they can provide of where their given state was and to where their utopia is after you come in, and that transformation that you help them achieve is really what you wanted to be able to document.
Yep. I totally agree. And I also think that the corporate market is just so different from the college market. I did a lot of work in the college market, and now, we're growing our family. So I'm not going to be traveling to Timbuktu College in the middle of January anymore. So I'm almost exclusively focusing on the corporate market. And the way that my clients and I interact is just so different than how I interacted with my collegiate clients. When you were getting started, it sounds like you were always kind of in this corporate space. Was there ever any intimidation that you had to overcome from being a smaller business or an emerging business representing these larger enterprise clients? Or were you always comfortable with that dynamic?
And actually, I was speaking at schools at first because
were you? Yeah. It's a great place to start, I think.
At 100%. I needed that experience. I needed to get on stage. And what I discovered is I'm old and my jokes, what I think is funny is not really resonating. I practice on my daughter and she looks at me like I've got 3 heads. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's not funny. She's like, no, Dad. um, but,
Right.
to your question, there was a confidence gap there initially. And I think that's totally normal. But with age comes wisdom, and with practice, you get better. So the more that you can be on stage, the more that you can volunteer, even if it's for the first 6 months, get on stage as much as possible to perfect your craft, and just make sure that you're able to back up what you're saying. So I'm constantly researching speakers. I'm constantly practicing, and I have what I call an IPA checklist. And it's not the beer, but it's called income producing activity checklist.
Mm-hmm.
And on that checklist, I have my week broken out at the top, Sunday through Saturday. And then at the bottom, I have all the activities that I can do. And then I've got boxes beneath each one. And I plug in whatever activity it is for that day that's going to produce income. And what that does is it helps me become better at consistency, number one.
Right.
I have, practice the speech, look at different techniques. I go back, and even courses that I've taken 2 or 3 years ago, I go back and I review those courses, because sometimes you just need a refresher and a reminder.
Yep.
The other big thing that helps me a lot is, you mentioned a methodology.
Yeah.
Whatever I do, I try to apply a system and a process to it. And it doesn't necessarily guarantee success, but it does increase the likelihood of being successful.
Right.
So that's another way that I add confidence to myself. And then it's the mindset. On my mirror, if you were to go into my bathroom, I've got my, affirmation statements, and people come in there and I get embarrassed when they go in there and they'll don't look at the mirror.
Right.
But for me, it's helpful because it's a reminder of like, hey, you know what? You do know what the heck you're doing.
Yep.
People are hiring you for a reason. You've got 20 plus years of experience. You've learned from, School of Hard Knocks. You learned from education. So all of these different things contribute to that success.
I 100% agree with everything that you've said, and I hope you guys are taking notes during this this interview, because so much of what I love about what you're saying and what I love about your approach to your career is that it is something that other people can duplicate. So I was telling someone earlier that I don't, when I go speak places and I'm talking to students and they're like, well, how did it feel to be, the only African-American woman in your law firm's department? How did that make you feel? And I always tell her, like, that's not as good of a question as what did I do to obtain the position that they can duplicate? Because feelings are it's not easy to duplicate, but the things that you're talking about, everyone can duplicate. Affirmations, having a system, writing down your income producing activities checklist, making sure you get through those things, because as an entrepreneur, if you don't work, you don't eat. If you don't set yourself up for success.
Preach.
And, like, you can't slack. Like, you really cannot slack. And it's so much easier when you do bring other people in. If you have those systems in place, then they can kind of take over, versus if you've just been doing it on the fly with no plan or no systems in place. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I think the other piece is really practicing what you preach to people.
Yeah.
So if I'm preaching, the laws of leadership and the law of connection, the law of Big Mo and law of priority and all these different things, I'm making sure in my daily processes, I am practicing those on a daily basis. And then I can talk to you and say, hey, you know what? I can't guarantee the same results for you, but here's what it's done for me. And here's what I've done. And then to your point, they take it, replicate it, tweak it if they need it, but make it work for them.
Yes, that's a great point.
Hey guys, Ashley Kirkwood here, and I just want to take a moment to invite you out to the Speak Your Way to Cash retreat. If you enjoy this podcast, then you will love the Speak Your Way to Cash 2020 retreat in October, taking place right outside Chicago, Illinois. This retreat is for speakers looking to grow their speaking businesses, land corporate or college clients, and skyrocket their earning potential as a speaker. The in-depth sessions at this multi-day retreat will leave you understanding exactly the high-level client acquisition strategies that I use to land corporate clients. You'll also know the exact steps you need to be taking to grow your current business. Let's get to the nitty-gritty. The sessions are amazing. We talk about selling your signature speech, and we actually have time to go over the techniques of speaking. So if you want to become a better speaker as well as a higher paid speaker, then you should come out. We have another session called TEDx Secrets. Bring your laptops. We are actually going to be looking up and applying to TEDx Talks at the retreat. This session will be critical if you're someone who wants to land a TEDx Talk. Client secrets. You'll hear from actual clients about what they want from speakers just like you, and selling success. We cannot do a retreat without talking about selling. But here's the session that I'm most excited about. We are going to do a vision organizational chart party. That means we are going to have not just vision boards, but vision org boards. We are going to map out how your speaking organization should be staffed, what you want that to look like, and how to use global outsourcing in a way that lets you fund the positions in your company that are currently open. So it's for you if you're ready to level up. If so, meet me in Chicago in October. Reserve your seat now. I'm only taking 30 speakers on this retreat. So go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com/2020 retreat. And the best part is you can get early bird pricing now of $550, or you can reserve your seat for just $75 down and make payments until the retreat. That's right. You can either pay in full and get early bird pricing of $550 for the entire 2-day experience, or you can reserve your seat for just $75 down. Whatever you decide to do, make sure you're in the room. It's going to be impactful, and I'm ready to help you start speaking your way to cash in person in Chicago in October. Again, the website is ashleynicolekirkwood.com/2020 retreat. See you soon. Can't wait, guys.
And I also like that you've had experience in the education market, because I typically tell newer speakers, if you need to get on stage, you do want to get paid, and you want to talk to people who already are used to paying speakers, then the education market is a great one. But how did you make the shift between what you're charging in the education market to developing these longer term packages for corporations? How did you develop the pricing for that and going through that proposal process versus the education market, which is pretty straightforward? Even if they buy 5 speeches, it's not as complex of a transaction as some of my longer term corporate packages. So how did you develop out your pricing model for the corporate market that you're now in?
I think I took a lot of what I learned in corporate when I was working in corporate for someone else. I worked in operations, and my last job was for an e-commerce firm where I had responsibility for go-to-market strategy. So I was able to take that and say, okay, you know what are our clients willing to pay? What is the problem we're solving for? What is that worth? What are other companies doing? Can they do this themselves? You know, how many years of expertise do I have in this? And I started kind of putting into this formula of, here's what I can bring to the table. Here are the different packages. So whenever I present to an organization, I try to give them 3 packages. Basically, bare bones. Hey, you can hire me, a one-hit wonder. I'll come in, and you know, you probably aren't going to get a lot out of it, to be honest with you. We overestimate the process or we overestimate the event, and we underestimate the process.
Right.
So it's not even about all the content that you get in that event. It's about how you apply it from once you leave there.
Exactly.
So what I share with them is say, hey, you know what? People need help applying this. So don't just stop there. So here's a second option for you in your company that I highly recommend. This is the sweet spot area where everyone chooses, or not everyone, but most people choose. And what you get with this are these 5 things, and I give them the benefits as well. And I think about how much time it's going to take me to invest, and then I put on my profit margin on top of that, and that's what I charge.
That makes sense. And with the 5 things, are those may take place over? So I imagine with bare bones, you're talking about 1 to 2 trainings.
Correct.
And then with the sweet spot, you're talking about a longer term solution. And are those do they start off typically quarterly for that second package, or are you talking annually? How long are you committing? Are you presenting a commitment to clients?
One of the things that I will usually do is either, if they're local, I'll come in and I'll do a complimentary lunch and learn session, because I want them to see the value and feel comfortable in hiring me. So that's kind of where it starts. And then from there, I'll maybe give away our PGI assessment, the Performance Gap Indicator assessment. And what that does is it sparks curiosity, and it requires them to have a strategy session with me. When we sit on the strategy session, I usually tell them, hey, you know what? Let's look at 6 months. And then from there, we can reevaluate. And those 6 months, what you get are these 4 or 5 trainings that you can choose from for your leadership team or emerging leaders. You get group coaching sessions. You may get a package of DISC assessments or Leadership 360 assessments with this. And basically, we take that and we build on top of that. And then once again, within those 90 days, I'll do a pulse assessment to say, hey, are we getting your ROI? Is the return on your investment there? And when they're able to take that pulse assessment again, and they see that gap closing, they can then say, yes, this is, things are getting better. And
that makes a lot of sense. They're doing a pre-assessment and a post-assessment, and then they can see the value for themselves. It's objective at that point.
Correct.
That makes a lot of sense. And you had a background in this in corporate that kind of helped you to build this out.
I had a background with operations and, things like Lean Six Sigma. I've got my Lean Six Sigma green belt. So I've got a lot of tools at my disposal where I'm able to take those into organizations. And these tools can lend themselves across any industry. For me, I usually try to stick with the tech sector. So it can be fintech, commerce, whatever it may be. But these are the organizations that are usually growing so rapidly and so quickly that they're changing the engine mid-flight.
Right.
And they don't have time to devote to the leadership training. They're just concerned, okay, how do we keep up?
But so they do see value in it, is what it sounds like. They
do, yeah. And you have to help them see the value because a lot of people, they just are like, hey, our numbers are good. Well, like,
right, exactly.
What if you can move the marker by 15%? Or what if you could increase your employee retention? Or think about the talent that you're missing out on because your Glassdoor reviews are horrible.
Right.
What if you're able to get better talent in the door, retain that talent, grow that talent, and build it from there? What would that do for your organization?
And that is what you're talking about now, and the questions that you're asking now. Those are some assessment questions you would ask during a discovery call. So for people that are listening, you want to, when he says help them see the value, for a lot of startup companies, my background was in startup before going to law school, they are concerned about the numbers and how fast they can get either to market, or if they're already in market, how fast they can get public, if that's a goal of theirs. But everything's about the numbers. And sometimes they don't see the leap between 93% of all American employees are stressed, and it's thus costing us 30% more on our health insurance bills every month.
Yes.
So you have to draw those gaps together for these companies and let them know how you can help them with that. Because I just spoke with a company and they were like, yeah, we don't do anything with diversity because we have perfect diversity here. Everyone's so happy. And I was just like, you have to be totally out of touch to think everyone at your company is happy with the current diversity numbers. It doesn't even matter if your company is doing great with diversity. To have that thought process around it means that you're missing a lot of things. Because that just cannot be at least I've never seen that be the case.
And a large part of it is education. Sometimes they just do not understand what all diversity encompasses.
Yes.
It's not just about color of your skin or race or, and then you layer on the inclusion piece of that.
Right.
And that's really kind of where it's like, okay, wow, I didn't realize that. And
which
what
is
I
even
usually
more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. What I usually will try to do is pull up Glassdoor, and I'll do the research beforehand, figure out who their competition is, figure out what they're doing, where they've ranked in certain things. And I will pull it up and say, okay, what do you think your competition is doing? Who is your biggest competitor? And, are they outpacing you? Well, here's some stats for them, and here's your stats.
Yes. Yes. I think Glassdoor is a great resource because people will be honest on anonymous review sites.
Yep.
And a lot of companies, especially if they're under 1,000 employees, they're not tracking. They may not have an anonymous reporting system where employees can call in and safely and anonymously report discrimination at work or any of those things. And so for a lot of companies, the first time they learn of it is when the employee leaves and they're hit with an EEOC claim or an Illinois Department of Labor claim, depending on the state. So you don't want that to be the case either, is you're living your life thinking your company is perfect and then you're sued.
And that's the beauty of a lot of these assessments is that they get the pulse from the employee. And there's a saying that if you ever want to know how the company is doing, ask the people doing the work.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I love how you built that out. So 6 months, and that's a substantial commitment for both the company and you to
Correct.
work with the company, because you never know how a client will be either until you really get in with them and start working with them.
And not all clients you want to work with. So if their mission or the way they do business doesn't resonate with me or align with what I believe and how I do business and my values, and they don't have to believe the same thing that I believe, but the values have to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Are they a company of integrity? Those type of things really resonate with me. So it's I'm more willing to walk away from business, and and I'm not at a point where I can walk away from too much yet, but I want to be able to get to that point.
Yes. And how does your team structure look? Is it just you? Do you have a team of trainers? How is that built out?
So it's pretty much just me. If I need something done, I will do freelancer sites. And I've got a few go-to people that they provide quality work for me, so I can always go back to them. If I need it in a crunch, I know their turnaround times are great. So from that perspective, it's great. If I need a training and a service that I don't have, a good example is mental health and wellness. That's not my area of expertise, but we can include that with leadership training. Then I'll rely on an external partner that I can go to and say, hey, here's a training that we can do together.
Okay. I like that. And I like the collaborative nature of that, because there are some firms that do diversity and they don't do sexual harassment. They won't touch it because of the legalities of it all. And so we've worked with a few of them, and I think those are smart partnerships to make. I have a few women who speak on mental health and wellness, and I do think that area is one of the most I just think there's so much opportunity if you're in that space, because companies are finally realizing the real impact on the bottom line of having employees that aren't, well mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting, especially among the African American community. I went out with a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in 20 years. And he and I were talking, and, we were talking about depression. And we just had a very candid conversation that usually will not hear two grown men talk about, especially two grown African American men.
Yeah.
So to be able to see that we can have that conversation and have it be more open dialogue. And he's like, you know what, I get it. I see where you're coming from, and here's what I've done. That's just a beautiful thing to know that we are moving in the right direction, and companies are realizing that.
They are. And I do think most people, I always say, like, companies aren't bad. There are individuals within companies that make bad decisions. And the sooner we can identify those individuals and help them to see how it's impacting the greater health of the organization, most of the time people are willing to change. No one wants a bad work environment. And for some people, they're totally just not self-aware. They don't even know they're making your work environment horrible by doing the things that they're doing. So I love that there are so many speakers in that space who are bringing that knowledge to the forefront for organizations that care.
And that's really one of the reasons why I started focusing on emerging leaders is I've got this philosophical belief that no leader should feel like their impact doesn't matter in their company. So to be able to give them the tools to succeed. And on the flip side of that coin, no employee should have to go to a job that they hate and endure, a leader that doesn't know what they're doing and be frustrated and spend 40, 50, 60 hours at a job that they hate, come home, stress about it, go to sleep, wake up in the middle of the night, stressing, go to, work the next day. And a friend of mine, she once said that we spend 100% of our time on 10% of who we are. Think about that. It's like,
wow,
the impact that you can make and you should be making. So that's just my philosophy, is that no leader should feel like their impact doesn't make a change in the organization. So part of what I do is to help them change that and shift that.
That's a phenomenal point. And going back to how you're kind of structured, I like that you use freelancer sites. We have a few that we've used. One of our events was sponsored by Fiverr. They have some good folks on there, but I also like that you said when you use those sites, you find the people within those sites that work well, and then you continuously use those people. Because it is great to find good people and then consistently use them. So what's next for you? What is your vision for your company in the next 5 years?
Oh my goodness. And I start smiling big. Just big things. So I've got two books that I'm currently working on.
Wow.
One is a leadership book, and it's basically on culture transformation, and it's the 5 pillars of leadership. Creating a culture of champions. So that's one book that I'm working on, and then another book is I've been working on it for a few years, and it's just been difficult to write, and that's called Forgotten Sons, and it's about my life story. Just going through the foster system, being abandoned at birth, and losing my mother to cancer, and then eventually finding my birth family, and
Wow.
what that whole piece was like, and the lessons that I took from that. So my goal is to be able to go on a speaking tour with that book specifically,
Hmm.
continue to be on stage at conferences, and continue to just build the business and the brand. And, hopefully, in the next 5 years, I don't need to be a millionaire by any means. If I am, great. But just to be able to do what I do and make an impact and continue to build leaders is what my goal is.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so very much for taking some time to speak with us today. What advice would you give to the speaker who's just starting out, copiously taking notes on this episode, and wants to land their first corporate client? What would you say to them? What should they be focusing on?
Oh, I guess one is understanding the law of priority, and understanding that all activity is not accomplishment. So figuring out
Mm.
where to put your energy, understanding the law of momentum, that, basically it says that leader's best friend is, momentum is a leader's best friend. But on the flip side of that coin, whatever you're doing that is negatively impacting you can also be a bad thing. So it can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So once you start getting some traction, continue with that, and just understand that it's gonna snowball for you.
Hmm.
And then continue to add value. Don't think that it's always just about you. Make sure that you add value to someone else first before trying to think about the paycheck. And at that point, I think you're going to find that the business is going to open up for you because people know that you're genuinely interested in making a difference.
That is great advice. Everything that you just said was great advice. Thank you so much. And where can people find you to connect with you further?
Yep, absolutely. So my website is israelgreene.com, and that's ISRAELGREENE. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, both Israel @_Greene.
Perfect. Perfect. And we will be sure to link to your social handles. Well, guys, this was another great episode with Speak Your Way to Cash. We're honored to have J. Israel Greene here. When his books come out, hopefully he lets us know, and then I'll share them with you guys as well. But have a phenomenal, phenomenal day, and stay tuned in for the next episode of Speak Your Way to Cash. All right, wasn't that interview amazing? If you're anything like me, you have pages full of notes. But here's the thing. Before you head out, I want you to go to facebook.com and join the Speak Your Way to Cash Facebook group. That is where I am. That's where a ton of other speakers are, a ton of other people who listen to the show. We all congregate there and chat. And it's 100% free. Now, if you're ready to take your speaking career to the next level, I have 2 ways for you to do that. One, you can go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com/SYWTC live replay and pick up the live replay. That training is 7 modules, chock full of information. It's crazy. Go over there, read all about it. Or if you want a more personal experience, you already know that you want to be a speaker. You're ready to fully commit, and you want someone to walk you through it and save you tons of time Googling and doing it on your own, then book a VIP day with me. You can go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com, scroll down until you see the VIP day section, and get more information on that there. All right. Thank you guys again for watching. Please do not forget to leave us a review. That is how we keep this train rolling and get some of the best speakers in the world to get on this show. So please, please, please leave a review. Shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram, and Facebook in the Speak Your Way to Cash group, Instagram at the Ashley Nicole Show. And I'd be more than happy to chat with you and say hi. All right, y'all have an awesome, awesome day.